You never expect a simple afternoon tea to become the moment that reshapes everything you thought you understood about connection and belonging. There I was, pouring Earl Grey into porcelain cups, when my nephew said something that stopped time itself. The most profound revelations don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they come from the people we've known forever, waiting patiently for the right moment to show us who they truly are. Let me take you back to that afternoon. It was a Wednesday, one of those gray spring days when the clouds hang low and soft, wrapping the world in hushed anticipation. I'd spent the morning puttering around my cottage, dusting surfaces that didn't really need dusting, arranging fresh herbs from the garden in a ceramic vase, generally keeping my hands busy while my mind drifted. I'd even brought out my grandmother's china set, the delicate one with painted violets along the rim, reserved for occasions when someone might truly appreciate such things. The house carried the gentle scent of vanilla and bergamot from the candle burning in the living room. I wanted everything to feel welcoming and peaceful. I wasn't anticipating anything extraordinary. I was simply looking forward to spending time with Alex, my late brother's son, who'd asked if he could drop by for a visit. Alex is roughly 12 years my junior, and though we didn't share a childhood, we've always maintained this effortless, intuitive connection. He's the sort of person who engages completely when you speak, with eyes that truly focus on you and an expression that invites honesty. He hadn't stopped by in several weeks, so I decided that fresh tea and some lemon cake would make for a lovely reunion. He arrived precisely when he said he would. I opened the door to find him standing there with a modest bouquet of daffodils wrapped in simple brown paper. Something in my chest warmed at the thoughtfulness of it. "These reminded me of you," he said as he stepped inside. Bright and quietly resilient, I smiled, genuinely touched. That might be the kindest thing anyone said to me in months. "Come in, please." As he entered, I noticed something different about him. Not physically tired, but carrying something invisible, a weight in the way he moved, the slight hesitation before he removed his jacket. I've learned not to press people. They reveal themselves when the moment is right. We settled at my kitchen table, the one positioned by the window overlooking the small courtyard garden. I poured the tea, served generous slices of cake, and we began with the comfortable surface topics. His recent promotion at work, a humorous incident involving his roommate's failed cooking experiment. The small moments that make up a life and make you chuckle. But then, somewhere between the second cup and the final crumbs of cake, the atmosphere shifted. Alex's gaze lingered on the steam rising from his teacup, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality. "You've always been the one person in my life who never made me feel judged," he said quietly. Even when I struggled to put feelings into words, that caught me off balance. "What do you mean?" I asked gently. He drew a slow breath and lifted his eyes to meet mine. "You've always made me feel truly seen, especially after Dad died, when I was barely holding myself together. You stepped forward in a way nobody else did." I reached across the table and rested my hand on his. "I wanted to be there for you. You were so young and hurting so deeply." "I know," he nodded. "And it wasn't just back then. It's now too. You still genuinely listen. You don't interrupt or dismiss what I'm trying to say." I felt a tightness in my throat. I hadn't fully grasped how much those small acts of attention had meant to him. But I could see there was something more behind his words, something urgent pressing to surface. "Lately," he continued, "I've been reflecting on what truly matters, who truly matters in my life." He paused, and I allowed the silence to expand between us, recognizing it as meaningful rather than uncomfortable. "That's why I came today," he said. "Not just to express gratitude, but to be completely honest. I've been carrying something inside for a long time, and I can't keep it hidden anymore." There it was. That shift. The moment when you sense the ground beneath you beginning to tilt. I remained still, simply waiting for him to continue. Alex leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly. "I realize this may seem strange, perhaps even inappropriate to some, but I need you to hear me out." I felt my pulse quicken. My nephew, whom I thought I understood completely, was about to share something I hadn't anticipated. The air between us became charged with a tension I couldn't quite name. And yet I wasn't frightened or defensive. I was curious, open in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "All right," I said, folding my hands on the table. "I'm listening completely." Relief washed over his face, and what he said next opened a door in my heart I hadn't realized was closed. He didn't rush his words. Alex studied his teacup for a long moment, then met my eyes again with more steadiness. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, as though the walls themselves might overhear. "I've developed feelings for you," he said. "Not simply as family, not just appreciation or fondness, but something deeper. Something I've been afraid to acknowledge." I blinked. For a moment, I questioned whether I'd heard correctly. The words hung suspended in the air between us like the steam from our tea, not dissipating but lingering. I didn't speak. "I couldn't, not yet," he continued, gaining confidence. "I understand this might seem out of place or excessive, but it's the truth. It wasn't something I planned or pursued. It simply developed over time. And I'm not asking anything of you. I just needed you to know because pretending otherwise feels dishonest." I stared at him, this grown man with thoughtful eyes and a tender soul, laying himself bare in my kitchen. In that moment, the room transformed into something beyond a simple kitchen. It became a space suspended between what had always been and what could suddenly, impossibly become. I took a long, measured breath. "Alex, this is quite a lot to process." "I know," he said quickly. "And I'm not expecting reciprocation. I'm not asking for anything to change. I just needed to stop concealing it. You've always encouraged me to speak my truth, to be honest about what's in my heart. It wouldn't be fair if I couldn't extend that same honesty to you." The air felt still, like the moment before a summer storm arrives, heavy with something about to break. "Your family," I said slowly. "But you've also always been more than that. Not in this way, not exactly, but I've always felt a connection to you I couldn't entirely explain." He nodded. "I've felt that too." I looked at him, truly looked. He wasn't that confused boy I'd helped guide after my brother's passing. He wasn't the uncertain teenager I'd checked in on regularly. He was a man now, a thoughtful, self-aware, emotionally mature man who'd come here not to manipulate or pressure, but to speak his truth. And somewhere deep inside, some quiet, hidden part of me had been yearning for exactly this kind of openness from someone. "I'm not rejecting what you've said," I told him carefully, "but I need time to sit with it, to understand what I feel." "Of course," he said, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Take all the time you need." We finished our tea in companionable silence, the kind that doesn't demand filling. When he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. He paused on the threshold, turning back to me. "Thank you for listening," he said. "That's all I really needed." I watched him walk down the path to his car, and as the door closed, I leaned against it, my heart beating a rhythm I didn't recognize. Not panic, not fear, but something else entirely. Possibility. The days that followed were strange and reflective. I moved through my routines with a new awareness, as though I was seeing my life from a different angle. Every small task carried weight. Making coffee in the morning, watering the herbs in the courtyard, reading in the evening light. Everything felt charged with meaning. I didn't immediately tell anyone about our conversation. Not because I felt shame, but because it felt precious, something that needed protection before it could be examined or defined. The world rushes to judgment about what it doesn't understand. And this, whatever it was, deserved gentleness and contemplation. I thought about Alex constantly. Not in an obsessive way, but in quiet moments when my mind wandered. His words echoed through me, and I found myself asking questions I'd avoided for years. What did I truly want? What made me feel alive? When had I last felt genuinely seen by another person? Thursday evening arrived, and I found myself sitting in the courtyard garden as the sun set, wrapped in a shawl, listening to the birds settle for the night. My phone buzzed with a message from Alex. "I hope you're doing well." No pressure about anything. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. Simple words, but they carried such consideration. He wasn't demanding answers or pushing for resolution. He was simply being present, giving me space while remaining available. That combination of patience and care moved something in me. I replied, "Would you like to come over Saturday afternoon? I think we should talk more." His response came quickly. "I'd like that very much." Saturday afternoon was warm and bright, the kind of day when the light seems to bless everything it touches. I spent the morning tidying up, then changed into a comfortable dress I hadn't worn in ages, one that made me feel like myself rather than who I thought I should be. When Alex arrived, he brought nothing but himself and an open expression. We settled in the courtyard this time, surrounded by lavender and rosemary, the scent creating a calm atmosphere. I've been thinking about our conversation, I began. About what you shared. He nodded but didn't interrupt, giving me space to find my words. I realized something, I continued. I've spent most of my adult life caring for others, being who everyone needed me to be. I raised you partly after your father died. I took care of my mother in her final years. I've been the reliable one, the steady one, but I never really asked myself what I needed or wanted. His expression remained gentle, attentive. What I've come to understand, I said, is that I've been lonely. Not for company, I have plenty of that. But for genuine connection. For someone who sees me as a complete person, not just as a role I fill. That's all I've ever seen, Alex said softly. You, just you. I felt tears prick my eyes. There's a part of me that's afraid of what people might think, of how they might judge this. But there's also a part of me that's exhausted by living according to everyone else's expectations. Then don't, he said simply. Live according to your own heart. I looked at him, this man who'd grown into someone so kind and wise, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not excitement or passion in the conventional sense, but something deeper. Recognition. Peace. I don't know exactly what this means, I admitted, or where it leads. But I know that when I'm with you, I feel understood. I feel valued in a way I haven't in years. He reached for my hand slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. I didn't. We don't have to define it, he said. We can just let it be what it is. We sat together in the warm afternoon light, hands intertwined, two people who'd known each other for years, discovering an entirely new dimension of connection. It wasn't about romance in the traditional sense. It was about recognition, about two souls acknowledging they'd found something rare and worth nurturing. The weeks that followed were gentle and exploratory. We took long walks together through the nearby nature reserve, talking about everything and nothing. We cooked meals together in my kitchen, finding joy in simple collaboration. We sat reading in comfortable silence, just enjoying each other's presence. I discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. The part that loved spontaneous laughter. The part that craved intellectual conversation. The part that simply wanted to be held without expectation or demand. Alex never pushed for more than I was ready to give. He understood that whatever we were building needed to develop naturally, without force or pressure. That patience was perhaps the greatest gift he offered me. One evening, about 2 months after his initial confession, we were sitting on my couch after dinner, the room lit only by candles. I was leaning against him, his arm around my shoulders, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Are you happy? He asked quietly. I considered the question seriously. Yes, I said, I am. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel genuinely happy. He kissed the top of my head gently. That's all I wanted. Your happiness. I turned to look at him. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. The freedom to be myself without apology. The courage to choose what my heart wants rather than what's expected. You've given me that too, he said. You've shown me what it means to be loved for who you truly are, not for who someone needs you to be. We stayed like that, wrapped in quiet contentment. As the candles burned lower and the night deepened around us, I knew the world outside might not understand what we'd found together. There would be questions, perhaps judgment from those who couldn't see beyond labels and expectations. But I also knew that some connections transcend conventional definitions. They exist in their own space, governed by their own truth. What Alex and I had discovered wasn't about defying conventions. It was about honoring the authentic connection between two people who genuinely saw and valued each other. It was about choosing presence over absence, truth over pretense, courage over fear. As I finally headed to bed that night, I paused at the window, looking out at the stars scattered across the dark sky. I thought about all the years I'd lived according to an invisible script, following rules I hadn't written, meeting expectations I hadn't agreed to. And I thought about how Alex's simple honesty had given me permission to write my own story. Love, I realized, doesn't always arrive in the forms we expect or in the packages society deems acceptable. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a kitchen over tea and cake, bringing with it the chance to choose authenticity over appearance, connection over convention, and the courage to follow your heart wherever it leads. And for that gift, That precious gift of genuine seeing and being seen, I would be forever grateful. Whatever the future held, I knew I was finally living a life that felt true. Surrounded by someone who valued me not for what I could provide, but simply for who I was. That, I thought as I drifted towards sleep, was the rarest form of love there is. And I had finally found it in the most unexpected place.